Ashley
Whoa.
she took Sharpies everywhere. She got to the point where she took Sharpies and gave it to us.
There we go.
I don't need this.
Good afternoon. Welcome to the November 4th Apex Planning Board meeting. We will have a moment of silence. And if we could rise to the Pledge of Allegiance. Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Diane, do we have any items of information?
Amanda's going to handle it today. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you. Hi, Amanda.
Hi. So I just wanted to introduce you to someone. This is Bruce Venable. He's our new planner too in the planning department. Bruce is a graduate of Texas State University with a degree in environmental resource management, and he brings to us several years of experience from his work with the town of Clayton, where he contributed to projects such as a new unified development ordinance, small area plans, and served as the lead reviewer for current planning projects. Bruce is passionate about planning, enjoys life with his wife and 3 dogs, and is excited to be part of the Apex planning team. So just want to introduce you. You'll see him soon.
Welcome.
Welcome, Bruce. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you. Thank you, Amanda. All right. I want to take this moment to remind everybody that tomorrow is Election Day. If you have not gone out and early voted before things shut down over the weekend, please cast your votes tomorrow. I don't know the time of the polling locations tomorrow, but I know that you can look that up for the Board of Elections. All right, we are going to start with public comments. The purpose of public comment is to speak on an item that does not appear in the agenda under public hearings. Any member of the public wishing to comment on public hearing items will be called at the appropriate time later in the agenda. Do we have anybody who would like to speak on public comment? Yes. All right. Don Cozzolino, thank you. Apologies. And Don, you have 3 minutes. You'll see the lights there.
Okay, very good.
Thank you.
Thank you. Don Cozzolino. Good evening, everyone. So I talked in length at town council meetings about seriousness of traffic crashes, the congestion, aggressive driving. And I've actually presented a lot of facts on what the roadways look like. I've also documented with the help of DOT crash data, but I put this together myself, the amount of crashes, the cost of those crashes. This is estimated costs and not lifelong, but 143 crashes, 263 vehicles, and $1.2 million in estimated property damages. Again, not lifelong. It's really, really a lowball number. But this is our whole area of the New Hill Friendship community. And these are all secondary roads. I don't believe you're aware of them. They're not under Apex's jurisdiction. They're under DOT. And so they get lost in the shuffle. But this is really important too. Again, DOT, right on their websites, there's monitoring stations and there's a code here. But I plotted this all on the chart, and we actually have one on Old US 1, Bosco Road, 4,500. We've got Kelly Road, 19,000. We have NC 55. 54,000, that's 2023 data. We do this data on secondary roads every 2 years. This data is readily available with the computer and a portal. No access needed. I've asked the town council to consider the seriousness of crashes. And the reason is because you have committed to the Vision Zero plan, which is like no fatalities or the lowest amount you can get to. Because of development, if it's not responsible, We're 100% dependent on cars out in Western Wake County. 100%. We've got capped schools, so people have to migrate through our community, and their kids go to another school. So our 3 schools, Apex Elementary, Middle, and High, have all been capped since 2021. That means no more people in. Okay, so they have to find a school somewhere else, even if they move to our community. You have what, over 3,200 construction permits or houses in development. All of this is going on. What I plead with you is to consider safety in our community as number 1, and we can do more. Okay, we can do more than what we're doing today. And what I've asked is, Randy is not here. He's usually at the town council, sorry. I'm looking for him. Hi, Jeff. What I would like is response from the members of the staff and from the town of Apex to address this very serious matter. And I'll give a quick story because otherwise we're gonna be at a zero vision. So my parents came to visit. They're elderly. My mom can't walk. I did the whole car service thing to the airport because they left out of a big airport. I did the whole concierge thing. I did, paid for all that out of my pocket. They got a wheelchair, all that nice stuff, right? Got on the plane, nice sunny day, landed at RDU, you know, zip, zip out of there. You know how easy it is. I picked them up, we're driving home. I'm driving down Old US 1 from 540 South Salem exit. And I'm like, just ready to point out, you know, you go, oh, this development wasn't here this year and that one wasn't there. And I'm right coming up to Friendship Road. You know that intersection? We talk about it a lot because there's a traffic light going to be put in that intersection.
Dawn, you're at 3 minutes. Our timer's not working right this minute.
Oh, okay. May I just finish the, may I just continue? Thank you for your attention.
If you could wrap.
So, yes, and I was just ready to point out my friend's Friendship Road. And there was a car next to me. It's a 2-lane road. And a car, I guess just aggressive or in a rush, passed on a double lane. I was going 40. It's a 45-mile-per-hour road. He was head-on into our car with a vehicle with 3 people in the car. He almost hit us, but I slowed down, and I hit my horn and stayed in my lane. But I'm telling you, our life flashed before us, and that was on a random Thursday, middle of the day, sunny, nothing going on, no weather conditions, nothing. So I plead with you, we could do better. When you plan, we need a traffic impact study to the area on these secondary roads. Thank you very much for your attention tonight.
Dawn, thank you very much. And I did want to connect, have you been in contact with the transportation staff around Vision Zero? I'm glad that you made reference to it because I wanted
I've
to make sure that
contacted Wake Sheriff because they don't have as much resources like most departments, right? Like everybody's strapped, right? But I did contact them immediately to report all the concerns, give them the traffic accident data because they don't have that at their fingertips. Tell them about our situation. We have farm vehicles as well, horse trailers and things that pull out on the road. And I've seen so many near misses just in the last couple of weeks. And I just asked if there's something our community could do, but really we're not trained to do something. So I was volunteering some services, but they said they would try to patrol the area more. But I've been asking if we can make it a safe corridor. That's something we had up north. It makes the road safer and the fines higher because it makes safety paramount. And that's all we want to do is get everybody get home safe.
Are you from, it sounds like you have talked with county staff. Have you spoken with town staff in relation to our Vision Zero plan around transportation and reducing accidents?
No, I'd be happy to. Would that be Russell Dalton and that crew?
It would.
Okay.
So I will make sure that Russell and you.
We'll have a meeting. Very good.
Thank you,
Thank
Dawn.
you so much.
All right, Elizabeth? I'm sorry, Elizabeth Stilt.
Elizabeth Stitt.
I apologize.
No worries. Everybody gets it wrong. I always have to spell it too. Elizabeth Stitt, 3113 Friendship Road. Tagging on to what Dawn was sharing about the traffic is we have been in touch with DOT and Campo. And one of the things that, and I've had a long history with Russell and team, the thing that makes it challenging, and I think even for you, is we have multiple jurisdictions. We have parts of our area that is in the corporate limits, part of it is ETJ, part of it is Wake County. And one of the things that I discovered a year or two ago was the traffic studies from Holly Springs, which is on 1 mile down Friendship Road, wasn't including the traffic that Apex had, and vice versa. And so DOT had worked with us and worked with Russell and team and the Holly Springs team to say, hey, you have to start considering everybody's traffic. I think what doesn't get in front of you as a planning board is you'll have a development that comes in, and I'm just going to pick on Peak Landing because it's relevant. It's got 70 homes. And so those 70 homes are not going to generate enough traffic for a traffic study. But where it is and what's happening around it, the context, is really important. So we're going to try to start coming and help bringing some of the context. So even if that development itself doesn't need it, if you look at the way the hills go along Old US 1, around Peak Landing, for instance, you have no line of sight. You got to get up to a certain point before you see it, and vice versa. And that
Just one more moment. I'm so sorry. One more minute. I'm so sorry that lights aren't working. But
no,
one
no
more.
worries. So we want to try to help add some context so that when you're looking at development, that you're understanding really what's happening. It's just not a traffic study. It is really the game of chicken that we play with our lives every day of trying to dart in and out of traffic. And yes, the stoplight is going to help, but all these developments that are right on Old US 1 without stoplights, they're going to be darting in and out. So this whole behavior is risky. So that's where Don's doing the data. I'm going to just add the context. Thank you.
Elizabeth. Thank you. All right. Is anybody else want to speak in reference to public comment? Okay. With that, I will close public comment and we will move on to consent agenda item number 1, the minutes from our October meeting. Any questions, comments, possible motions?
Motion to approve.
All right, motion.
I second.
All right. Second. Thank you. All those in favor, aye. Aye. Anybody opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. And now we will move on to public hearings. Public hearing number 1, Jenna, for a motion on the Western Big Branch area plan.
Hi, good evening.
Evening.
Today I'll be presenting the Western Big Branch Area Plan encompassing portions of the Friendship and New Hill communities. Did that help?
Yes,
Okay.
thank you.
So here's an overview of what I'll be going through today, starting with the plan introduction, the plan outcomes, and a high-level overview of the planning process, and then provide some public engagement highlights. And I'd like to note that updates were provided to the Planning Board and Town Council in September of 2023 and May of 2024. Excuse me. And at the September of 2023 meetings, we provided an introduction to the plan, as well as a summary of the public input provided on land use preferences and transportation needs in the study area. At the May 2024 meetings, we provided a summary of the public input provided on 3 plan amendment scenarios that were shared with the public in March. And then I'll get to the draft plan public input summary and resulting revisions, and then the revised draft plan public input summary, and then the staff recommended plan recommendations, and finally the requested motion from the board. So here's an exhibit of the study area. So on the east, the study area is bounded by NC 540. On the north, it's generally bounded by Old US 1 and the railroad tracks. On the west, just west of New Hill Holloman Road, and on the south by US 1. So some plan considerations and outcomes. So what sparked development of this plan is that substantial development has occurred around the study area, and property owners and residents have requested involvement in future planning for this area, and planning for the Big Branch Pump Station and Force Main project was underway. The outcomes is that this would lead to revisions to the 2045 land use map and the 2045 transportation plan, as well as a set of additional plan recommendations. So here's an overview of the planning process. Last spring and summer, we began to gather data and collect community input. And then in the winter time, we developed 3 draft plan amendment scenarios and then brought those to the public for input this past spring, and then prepared a draft plan and then a revised plan. And now we're here presenting to planning board, and we'll be presenting to town council soon. This slide is included just to show the extensive public engagement that was completed for this project. We received a lot of great feedback through the in-person meetings and through the plan development process, and then less feedback was provided as we got to the plan document review periods. So I'd like to kind of walk you through the stages, the different iterations of the draft plan to the revised draft plan and on. So on July 16th, the draft plan was released and the public comment period was open through August 7th. And then we received public input and staff recommended some revisions to the plan. So a revised draft plan was presented in September and a public comment period was opened. And then we received some comments, but no changes were made between the revised draft plan and the final draft plan. So I'll kind of go through that from here on. So right now I'll go through the summary of public input on the draft plan. So we received some comments on the additional plan recommendations in the draft plan, and these included support for the community proposed overlay district, and a note that a policy to encourage the preservation of forested areas does not address other environmental issues, and a comment to allow voluntary agricultural districts and enhance voluntary agricultural districts within Apex, and to provide a 50-foot buffer between those districts and new development. And then a comment concerning traffic and safety at the intersection of Friendship Road and Old US 1, and that economic development along the future Friendship Road corridor and at the future interchange with US 1 benefits the developer rather than the community. We received some location-specific transportation comments, and those are displayed on this exhibit. And the circle size around the number corresponds with the frequency of the comment. And at the end of each bullet point, the number in parentheses represents the number of times that we received that comment. So comment 1 is against the New Hill Loop collector. 2 is a comment to shift Richardson Road further from Bosco Road and Hensley Road, and a similar comment against the Richardson Road alignment. 3 is against the future Friendship Collector Street. And then comments 4 through 6 we didn't hear as often as 1 through 3. Comment 4 is to provide bike lanes along Old US 1. And just one note that bike lanes are included on the adopted plan. Comment 5 to provide bike lanes along Friendship Road. And comment 6 to remove the 110 feet of right-of-way along Friendship Road. And then at the bottom of the slide, there are some general transportation comments that were submitted. The first being support for bike lanes and side path. And the next, concern about traffic congestion with new development given the proximity to the nuclear power plant. We received some location-specific land use comments on the draft plan, and again, the circle size corresponds with the frequency of the comment. Number 1 is to change the Womble Circle area, or the area on the east side of New Hill Holloman Road, south of the railroad tracks, to rural density residential. 2, to reconsider the industrial employment and office employment land use designation along the Richardson Road corridor. 3, against the high density residential in the New Hill Plaza. And just one note that this land use designation was not proposed in the draft plan. Number 3. And number 4 is to change Hazelhurst Circle to rural density residential. And finally, number 5, to add commercial services to 3413 Pleasant Plains Road. Okay, so based on the input provided on the draft plan, staff recommended some revisions. So I'm going to go through the revisions that were made to the draft plan and then the revised draft plan with these changes was then presented to the community for input. So the first change is in the Womble Circle area, and the change is there's a land use and a transportation change. The land use is to change the medium density residential and office employment designations to rural density residential, and the transportation plan change is to remove the New Hill Loop collector from this area. The second change is along Friendship Road, and that's to add proposed paved shoulder as the bicycle facility along that roadway. And finally, to change 3413 Pleasant Plains Road from just low density residential to both low density residential and commercial services. And then there were some changes to the additional plan recommendations and the text revisions. The change to the additional plan recommendation is to add a recommendation to coordinate with Wake County to allow the voluntary agricultural districts and the enhanced voluntary agricultural districts within the Apex corporate limits in ETJ. And then there were some changes to the plan document text, but those didn't change the plan recommendations. So now we're moving to the revised draft plan. So I'm going to provide a summary of the input that we received on the revised draft plan, but no changes were made between the revised plan and the final draft plan. So we received a petition from 28 residents against the commercial services designation at 3413 Pleasant Plains Road, and that number, the 28 represents the number of people, but staff recommend maintaining the low density residential and commercial services at this location because it aligns with, or it's across from the main entrance to Pleasant Park. Additionally, there are plans for a water tower at Pleasant Park across from this property, so that makes it less attractive for residential development. And there's a major collector street running through this property from east to west. And finally, we received this specific request from the property owner, and we've made an effort throughout the planning process, and we received input from the property owner to weigh that heavily as we consider the plan amendments. So now moving to the staff recommended plan, or the final plan, that was released on October 3rd. And just as a reminder, there were no changes between the revised plan and the final draft plan. So I'm going to go through a high-level summary of the recommendations in the final draft plan. So this represents changes to the adopted 2045 land use map and the adopted 2045 transportation plan. So the plan generally includes low-intensity residential land uses consistent with current conditions. So this primarily includes rural density residential at 1 unit per 5 acres, and rural transition residential at 1 unit per acre. And where residential is recommended in the study area, it's at lower densities than what's currently allowed in the Wake County portions of the study area. The plan anticipates limited roadway improvements due to the low intensity land uses throughout the study area. And the plan maintains the future Richardson Road corridor as a key regional connection for economic development opportunity. The plan aligns the Richardson Road US 1 interchange consistent with a regional hotspot study that was led by the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization. And the plan includes revisions to the context areas map consistent with the other changes consistent with the other amendments included in the plan. So this exhibit displays all of the proposed amendments to the adopted 2045 land use map and 2045 transportation plan, and all of the numbers in the circles correspond with table 1 in your staff report. If you'd like to take a look, it's on page 3 of your staff report, and the first column displays the map ID, the second column are the plan amendments, and then the third column is the reason behind each plan amendment. And I'm just going to provide a high-level overview of some of the key changes that are recommended in the plan, going from west to east. So the first being that the Bosco Road area is proposed to change to rural density residential. The second or I'm saying first and second, but those don't necessarily align with these numbers on the map. The next is that the Richardson Road US 1 interchange has been realigned consistent with that the hotspot study, and the high density residential land use designation has been removed from this interchange. The next one is that high density residential has been added to this area to the west of Friendship Road and south of Old US 1. Oh, I got ahead of myself a little. To the west a little is a change to the Silver Stirrup Lane area to rural density residential. And then most of the area along Friendship Road has changed to rural transition residential. And then a major collector street has been added has been realigned between Friendship Road and Pleasant Plains Road to follow the low density residential section. And I'd like to note that that's the only proposed collector street between thoroughfares in the study area due to the low intensity land uses. And along at 3413 Pleasant Plains Road, there's a proposed change to add commercial services at that location. The plan also includes a set of additional plan recommendations, and the full set is included as in the executive summary that's included as an attachment to your staff report, but I'm just going to go through some of the key recommendations. The first is to encourage agricultural business and agritourism, to encourage development of a small-scale downtown near the intersection of Hume Olive Road and Old US 1, to prepare a staff-recommended list of zoning conditions for rural areas for developers to consider. And this one's underway. Planning staff have presented a preliminary list of zoning conditions to Town Council recently at a work session. The next is to study and potentially invest in turn lanes and a traffic signal at the intersection of Friendship Road and Old US 1. And this is underway. Staff are coordinating with developers on improvements at this location. To conduct a feasibility study and improve access to Pleasant Park. And planning staff recently submitted a request to the Capital Area Metropolitan Planning Organization to include this study in their upcoming work plan. And finally, to review best practices and develop a policy to encourage the preservation of forested areas. So today's requested motion from the Planning Board is to recommend adoption of the final draft of the Western Big Branch Area Plan, encompassing portions of the Friendship and New Hill communities. And our next step will be to bring this plan to Town Council on the 21st, and then our plan is to bring it back to you all and Town Council at a later meeting for the actual amendments to the 2045 land use map and the 2045 transportation plan. And I'm here to try to answer any questions that you may have.
And I just want to ask a clarifying question. You're presenting to us today for recommendation that's going to the planning board, or I'm sorry, that's then going to council, and then you will come back based on the approval to make amendments to, or to make changes to the 2045 land use map.
That's correct.
Okay, thank you, just to clarify, thank you. Any questions for Jenna?
I've got one question. On number 25, change the rural density residential to low density residential and commercial services. Do you have any examples of, it says here is supporting the Pleasant Park. What type of business are we looking at that would be a low density residential or commercial services that would support that?
We haven't gotten into detailed discussions of what it would look like. There are a number of uses that are allowed at commercial services or under the commercial services land use. And I think the exact would be determined at a rezoning. Is there anything that you all would add?
We mostly know what we wouldn't want to see there. We don't want to see like a drive-through restaurant. That would not be compatible, but we'll have to wait until we have a proposal.
Okay. So I had heard something around, this is through the grapevine, something about a potential hotel at that site. It just doesn't seem like it would fit the character at all of the area.
We haven't heard anything about
Okay.
that, and I'm gonna say I don't think that it would be appropriate since most hotels are being built are 5 stories. That's not an
Sure.
appropriate location.
Right. Okay, thank you.
All right, additional questions for Jenna?
Yes, Jenna, first of all, great job on your presentation. I have a couple of questions, so I'll start from more recent, going backwards in terms of your presentation. Regarding agritourism, there has been, and this is not limited obviously to Apex. This is statewide and really other parts of the country. There has been a recent kind of an explosion of the taking advantage of the agritourism term and policy. One of which is wedding venues are now beginning to pop up in rural areas and are creating nuisance concerns for nearby residents. And so I've actually been working on a project related to that and have kind of dove into the statutes on that. And from my understanding, and so I pose this to you as just a suggested something to dive into as you proceed. Whether or not agritourism would really even be available or appropriate in this area based on the fact that there's no policy for farming itself. I mean, based on what I understand, most of the rural policies are residentially related, understanding that they're probably going to be developed in some rural fashion, but single family and probably not actually active agriculture. And so I would just encourage checking into the agritourism definition and into the statutory definitions of farmland and ag, because I think in order for agritourism to be compliant with the statutes, you've got to be a farm, and also find a way to avoid getting into some of those venue questions where people begin to take advantage of the agritourism terminology and develop these large-scale venues that end up being nuisance issues in terms of lights and noise and amplification and parking going on in these rural areas. So I toss that out. The other is, for example, on number 18, map ID number 18, for the removal of the proposed bicycle lanes off of Friendship Road. When a bicycle lane has been removed or proposed for removal, and instead the facility is going to be a wide shoulder, one of the things that tends to happen with cycling amenities is that, especially in terms of a wide shoulder, is that area is often not swept. It's not cleaned. It's not maintained either by DOT or by the municipality who might be maintaining the street. So again, this is not so much of a question, just more of something to contemplate, that when we switch from a dedicated lane to just a wide shoulder, it is, in fact, and you've touched on this in various points throughout the plan, that it is a popular cycling destination. It's a beautiful road. If we're going to switch away from a dedicated amenity and instead go to the wide outside shoulder, are there plans to include signage? Are there plans to include sharrows? Are you going to provide some other type of amenity for the cyclist that's obviously not the lane anymore, but still tells the cyclist and the vehicle that this is a shared situation? Does that make sense?
It does. And you may have already gotten this through the plan, but would it be helpful to explain kind of why it changed from a bike lane to a paved shoulder?
Well, I'm gonna leave that up to you guys. Okay. I think I understand, and I understand that I mean, y'all are the professionals. I just point out the fact that if you remove that amenity, but yet it still seems to be a cycling destination, how do we keep it safe for cyclists? How do we accommodate both sides of that fence?
Yeah, I think that'll be important to consider. I don't know if Cincheros are a different type of facility that we'd recommend those along Friendship Road, but I think signage will be important when there is a paved shoulder. Yeah.
Okay, great. And my third question, I can't, at this time, I was trying to remember it, and if I come back to it, I will get your attention, but thank you for the other two.
Sure, and can I, there's one piece of information it's kind of deep in the appendix, but to get it somewhat of what you mentioned at the agritourism, I don't remember the appendix number, it's one of the later ones. There's a review of the UDO, I think it's appendix G or H, that looks at the different agritourism uses, agricultural business and agritourism uses that we reviewed to see if they would be allowed in the land use or permitted in the land uses that are included in the draft plan. And wedding venues isn't one that we considered.
Great,
But
sorry.
yeah, no, that's okay. That's a good note to know that it needs to be an actual farm and to take a look at that, at the definition.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much for
Sure,
that.
thank you.
Jenna, I have a question.
Sure.
A small one. It says in the comments on additional plan recommendations to provide a 50-foot buffer between VAD, ZVAD, and new development. Is that different than what's noted on the UDO, or is that something new to this area?
My understanding is that would be a new requirement. It sounds like as though we don't, currently VADs and EVADs aren't allowed in town. And so the idea is if they were allowed, that there could be this added buffer. And there was some discussion about that at the work session. Would you add something to that, Amanda?
I don't think it's as much as whether a VAD or EVAD is allowed, but if there was a property that was in a voluntary ag district, then developing property adjacent to it would have to provide a wider perimeter buffer in order to help protect the character and those have some separation between would most likely be new residential development from the existing ag use.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks.
Any additional questions for Jenna?
Did
you remember?
My third one, yes. Sorry.
No, please.
So, again, coming from the original version of the plan and then to the modified version of the plan, and obviously responding to the residents who live in this area with a desire to maintain this rural character, maintain this low density. There's a responsibility there, obviously, but at the same time, we understand there's a dire need for additional housing, and not looking to get into that debate right now. I'm just curious because I didn't see it pointed out specifically in the plan or in the staff report. Can you just tell me anecdotally? What are the water and sewer connections in this area versus who might be still served by well and septic? In other words, are we maintaining a rural and low density policy in an area that is well served by water and sewer, or can you address that?
My understanding is that most of the study area does not have access currently to town water and sewer. Would you say that's correct, Diane? Okay.
Okay.
Does that answer your question?
That's very helpful.
Okay.
It is. Okay, good. Thank you.
General, we have one, I guess, technical question. On table ES1, on page 8, you've got under the quality of life issues, number 3A, you say encourage economic development along Richardson Road corridor at the future Friendship Road US1 interchange. Should that not sort of technically be a future Richardson Road US1 interchange? Because Friendship Road is not having an interchange at US1.
Yeah, we talked about this at one point. See if I can show the map. It's the same location. This is how it was referred to as in the hotspot study that was completed by Campo, but it's the same location.
Okay.
Yeah. Thank you.
I don't have a question, but just for clarification, Jenna, 3113 Pleasant Plain, the commercial, is that proposed in just go commercial in this?
That's
Thank
number 25, I
Thank you.
believe. Yeah.
But that would still require rezoning after land use amendments. It's currently not zoned for that. This would just be future land use.
Right.
Yeah.
Additional questions? Jenna's not going far, so if we have anything arise. Jenna, I just want to say thank you. I appreciate having an opportunity to be a part of the conversations. I appreciate your work on this and the rest of the staff's work, and I appreciate the neighbors' engagement around it as well. And so I'm excited to hear thoughts and appreciate just sort of being run along. So I just wanted to say thank you.
Yes, thanks for that.
With that, if you wouldn't mind grabbing the public comment sheet. Oh.
Thank you so much. The one with the proposed.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, that'll be
This one?
helpful for them to, yeah.
Okay.
Certainly, thank you. And Tina, we have the
Buzzers are working? Awesome, thank you. All right, with that, I'm gonna open public hearing on this. And Don Cozzolino, I think I said it correctly that time.
You did.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And the lights are working now.
Okay, Don Cozzolino, thank you very much, Amanda, Diane, and Jenna for all the hard work. We put together a more comprehensive presentation. Obviously, it can get into this type of situation, but we have a lot of small businesses in the areas. And to your question, Preston, actually Finnegan's Run is right on Mason Road, and it is a wedding venue. It's no nuisance at all. They have beautiful horses, a pond. It's across from an equestrian stable that teaches high-level eventing and dressage. That's run by a small business owner who has 2 properties. We have a dog agility training. We have a koi pond that's got 80,000-gallon tank of specialty koi fish. And we have numerous other businesses and actual food produce made. So we're actually a thriving community, and I know it kind of is, it sounds like you're kind of treating us like we should look like a city, but we're not a city. So I just wanted to explain the map here, because 2-dimensional maps get us into a lot of trouble. Just to go back to Olive Hume, just keep in mind with a traffic light, there's 32 accidents in the last 5 years, over $400,000 in damages, even with a light. Okay, so you're gonna add commercial there, just keep that in mind. So why are 2-dimensional not good? We oppose that Richardson Road. Why? Because it goes through 30 properties, homes, graveyards, things. Imagine your house being taken for a road. And talk about nuisance. The road is not like a little road out here. It's 120 feet wide, 2 lanes on either side, plus off and on ramps. And it's a grade separation, so it's up in the air, it's a bridge. It's not like a little road, it's a bridge. We don't have one single road in this area that is that big to generate that amount of volume. And imagine tractor trailers and everything and the accidents and crashes and the noise. So we would want even, sound barriers and all those expensive things to be put in every ounce of that road. But we're asking, there's a better way to move it. Or there's even Peak Landing, you could put an easement. I don't know why that wasn't, considered in the development. They're gonna have property right there where that road could go. So we're looking not for the road because you wanna connect or you wanna develop out. And besides, we are 100% well water, we're proud, and septic system. Not an easy life, but we appreciate our environment. And it has, I wanna correct you, Jenna, just because you used the word access, that's incorrect. That means like, oh, I just don't want to hook it up and be part of Apex. No, we actually are not by a sewer system, nor would we want to connect, but we do not have access. There's 0% access for all you developers out there. There's no access to water or sewer system. So I just want to be so clear on that. And this is what the roads look like. And I know they're charming, but they're commuting roads for people to get to and from their work, to the grocery store, to pick up their kids. It's not a hobby road, This is people living here that want peace and privacy and their freedoms. So it's very important, I think, to help you visualize, but I invite you to come out to this area because it's really special. And we're diverse and we're very different from you all, but we really love where we live and we love our neighborhood. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Elizabeth Stitt?
All right, I'm going to jump through a bunch of topics really quick since I have 3 minutes. First of all, a quick thank you. I would give more appropriate thank you, but 3 minutes doesn't give time, but did want to start with thank you. So we actually formed a community council where we have a street representative off of each of the streets representing their neighborhoods. So the recommendations and the comments that we brought to the town was based on our actual input from our particular streets. And we hired a land use attorney who was advising us how to approach all of this. Happy to have any sidebar conversation with anyone. We asked for many things that we didn't get, but this is a good start. It's progress towards what we had asked. So a couple things. Up until 2019, Apex marketed our area out here as equestrian friendly. So there are many equestrian farms out there. There's actually several equestrian communities where their HOAs and covenants say they cannot sell off, they cannot subdivide, and their covenants renew automatically. So we took and we mapped it out and said, okay, who's in the voluntary ag district programs, who's in HOAs that automatically, renew. There really is not much developable land out there. So where there may be needs for housing, our area is not necessarily the solution to Apex's problem because Apex marketed us as equestrian. We came out there as equestrian. We have our horses and cows. And so we built this community that we now hear comments that are designed to maybe dismantle the communities that we've invested in. So I would love to have more conversation to bring you up to speed on some of that. So bike lanes on Friendship Road. I toured Friendship Road with Brandon Jones, DOT, and about the bike lanes initially. And the way our country road is built, he says there is no way to add a wider shoulder or to do bike lanes because the ditches fall too far off. And even as one property at a time may develop, you're not going to have a safe roadway. You can't add that on one parcel without doing the whole section. And when you develop one side at a time or one parcel at a time, you're never going to get your bike lanes. So he shot me down in the very beginning, so I just shared that out. All right, and let's see, 21 seconds left. Let's see what else I had on my list. Let's see here. Horse farms, bike lanes, land use attorneys, for sure. In the terms of the 50 feet around the voluntary ag district, so my property is a voluntary ag, my cows are on a voluntary ag. I have electric fence, not quite up to the property line, but next to me where my cows are, there's a church that wants to come in. And so they need to control their young kids not to come and mess with my bulls or my cows. There's a safety issue. And the current UDO allows construction too close to the property line. That was the request from Wake County because we are trying to preserve some of the farmland and we want people just to stay safe.
Thank you, Elizabeth.
That's it. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there anybody else who has not signed up who would like to speak in the public hearing? Seeing that there is no one else, I will bring this back to the board for discussion and possible motion.
Tina, I'll start off. For their transparency, on page 3, number 19, it was moved to rural residential based on the property owner's request. That's my farm. So I bear no financial. There's no gain for me having talked tonight. I'm also in the Enhanced Voluntary Ag District. In the beginning, I was questioning should that 50, so in enhanced voluntary ag district, we have a 10-year note on our deed that we can't subdivide our property. And so we can't just go down and withdraw that. A voluntary ag district can go down, and I want to make sure I'm right, a voluntary ag district can go down and pull their ag district if they want to subdivide. So I was on the fence about a 50-foot buffer for both an enhanced and a voluntary ag district until I talked with a neighbor that has one, and because of banking issues, she was not allowed to enroll in an enhanced voluntary ag district. So I'm totally on board with a 50-foot buffer for either one of those. Much like I've got cows and horses on my property, and we're always concerned, not so much now, but we've always been concerned about kids coming up and they start to mess with the cows and the horses. So I fully applaud that 50-foot buffer. And to her point about the bike lane, being at the intersection of Friendship and US 1, about over half of my property from my property up to the road is about an 18-foot difference in height. And so it would be kind of tough because there's also natural gas lines now in that right of way that would be tough to navigate for bike lanes. But I am all for, having shoulders to do more safe bike riding. Yes, on any given Sunday morning we have packs of 50 to 60 bike riders that come down our street, and they don't bother me, I don't bother them. We make sure we mow our grass and get it off the street so that we've got a safe area. But I think the staff's done a great job. I agree with Ms. Stitt. I think it's a great start and allows those of us that live out there that want to maintain our way of life, we're able now to maintain it without having 2045 land use plans that will encourage developers into an area where it potentially will be cost prohibitive for water and sewer to come to our property.
Thank you. I will ask staff if Jeff needs to recuse himself.
No, this is a guidance document. It's
Okay.
not a rezoning.
Okay, just wanted to make sure.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Any additional comments?
I will have to also agree on Friendship Road with the bike lanes. It's tough pulling a horse trailer down there as it is now. I know. I am like you. I just don't think that's a good idea. I would like to strike that part out of here. Or I think sometimes you can also throw the baby out with the bathwater. But I'd like for council to reconsider before finalizing anything and have more effort put on Friendship Road for sure. I think of a lot of the other areas though, I'm glad to see some of the changes that were made. Overall, I think it's a decent plan. Obviously, there's some room for improvement. Are we going to get everything? I don't know. But I would like to see some more thought put into it before saying, let's go for it.
I apologize. I'm going to have to ask for a 5-minute recess before we continue discussion. Apologize.
We need a motion for that?
Please.
Motion for a 5-minute recess.
A second.
Thank you. to reconvene.
Motion to reconvene.
Thank you. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
I'll second.
Thank you. All right. We were in the middle of discussion, and appreciate that Jeff did not have to recuse himself. Thank you for that. There were some questions around not throwing out the baby with the bathwater, but maybe
That's the technical terms.
exactly. But maybe striking. I don't know if that is a proposal.
So Jenna has a clarification if we
Oh, thank you.
understood the comments correctly.
Thank you.
From what I heard, it sounded like the recommendation was to remove bike lanes from Friendship Road. But I'd like to clarify that the plan includes just paved shoulder. So if development were to come in along Friendship Road, we'd ask for a regular shoulder that's included in the 2-lane rural thoroughfare rather than a bike lane.
But the shoulder, does that also, with the shoulder versus a designated bike lane, is that just a difference in striping? I mean, because essentially, we're not trying to also necessarily encourage on a tight road more travel and including pedestrians along with tight travel.
So we typically, on our bike lanes, typically have curb and gutter along most of the roadways, but this is a rural section, so it would already have a shoulder. This is just kind of adding that it would be for cyclists.
Okay.
Does that kind of answer your question?
Overall width, though, I guess is what I'm asking.
If it changes so the overall width does not change with adding the paved shoulder. There would be the same shoulder with or without
Okay.
the bicycle facility.
The difference is curb.
Between a paved shoulder and a bike lane?
Is that what you're saying?
No, I'm saying that adding paved shoulder doesn't change the plans for this roadway.
I see.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that, you had mentioned maybe reconsidering, does that answer help clarify?
No,
or
it helps
change?
clarify it. Yes, it does.
Okay.
And I think going back to my original comment was removing the bicycle lanes and changing it, as Jenna noted, changing it to a paved shoulder, which is, as she stated, already included in the 2-lane rural cross section. And there's no change. There's no plan to change the cross section, correct? Right. And so the reason why I brought it up was if there was originally a bicycle lane proposed as a policy, then you may get people behind that. You may get people excited about that. And then if we're going to change that as a policy, realizing that we're still in draft form, but if we're going to change that, then and recognizing that the road itself is a cycling corridor. Now, I don't know if it's a designated corridor, so I want to be careful there. I don't know. But if it is, and we get rid of the bike lane and we go to this shoulder, then, and if it's heavily used by cyclists, even if it's designated or not, how do we maintain a safe environment for both the vehicles and the cyclists if we're going to get rid of the bike lane? I realize that a bike lane, and as she said, is typically found along a curb and gutter cross section. But how do we, if the road is being heavily used, how do we keep it safe for everybody? And so that can be through signage, that can be through a number of different things, but rather than just getting rid of it and then saying we've gotten rid of it, how do we keep it safe? So that was the point, and leave it up to the professionals.
I actually echo that, and I'd be curious, Jenna, if you could answer questions around that, around just maintaining safety. I mean, the idea that, folks are still going to, I don't also know whether it's a cycling corridor. I know many people who cycle down in the area, and so, they're cyclists are going to cycle regardless, and we want to make sure it's safe. So I would, to your point, I'd love to know any safety precautions that are going to be taken into consideration.
Yeah, to echo Mr. Mitchell, I think signage is important to know, to expect that cyclists will be along this roadway and to be on the lookout to make sure this is where, keep separation, yeah.
Thank you. I am incredibly excited of the work and the conversations that have started and that are ongoing, and that there's a recognition that this is a start, and that it may not be ideal and there's some give and take, but that it is a start of a plan and a point of reference, which I think is always really helpful as conversations continue. And so I'm excited that neighbors are continue to remain engaged. And if there are no other questions, I would love a motion or comments.
I'd like to comment that Jenna and staff has done just a wonderful job. This has been drawn out over years, and there's been a lot of work going into it. And I'll be the first to make a motion to approve.
I will second that, and expanding on what Jeff said, you know, it's addressing the concern for the community, and if there were a perfect plan out there, we wouldn't exist, because that's what we are here for each month, to revise and review and recommend. So with that, I will second your motion.
Well, if I could, just
Yes.
just in support of the recommendation or of the motion, because I too support the plan, support these revisions, appreciate all the work of staff, and appreciate Jenna's presentation today and the clarifications. Specifically addressing the proposal for new roadways. That's always tough. That is always a hard pill to swallow, and I recognize that. I think we recognize that as a board. One of the toughest things, though, is that conversation or that debate about being proactive or reactive. You know, you can read on social media, you can read it, you know, in a variety of different places, where communities struggle with congestion issues, and they say, well, gosh, I sure would have been nice if they'd planned for this. Well, that's what we're doing. And so we are the planning board, and we are planning for that. And that's tough, and especially in advance. So we need to plan for traffic. We need to plan for growth, recognizing that this area desires to maintain its rural character. Nobody wants to do anything to harm that. But we do need to be thinking proactively and not be reactive for our transportation corridors, because that just makes it worse for everybody. So I support the plan and I support the motions.
All right. If there are no other comments, I have a motion and a second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? All right, that passes unanimously. Thank you. And with that, I think we have one more motion to adjourn. We have no new business.
I'd like to make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second.
All right, all in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Anybody opposed? All right, thank you all.